let's see. Okay, API gateway. So with API gateway, you can create, publish, maintain, monitor, and secure APIs at any scale. At any scale means like 1, 10, or even 10,000 requests per second. It can handle it. And in API gateway, you can create 3 types of APIs. I would say it's 2 types, and there is one more that's similar to the rest. I want to elaborate more on this part. This is one of the most important keyword in this slide, and you have to understand this well. So I will explain this. For example, so now what will happen is, so this is your web client. This is your web client calling your API on the API gateway. And then it calls typical architecture is Lambda. And then you have DynamoDB. This is typical serverless architecture. It works well. Almost like many companies, they do use this. Now your app is here. It's a bunch of business logic code. And with traditional approach, what we do is, if you want to secure your application, you implement that on these application sites. In your application, you write some code. Do you do that or don't you? You do it on the application, like in your code, right? Following? Cool. With API gateway, now you can do the security part in here. Secure here. So now what would happen is you receive the request here from the clients, and they would validate the token or API gateway, like whatever they provide. And then if the token is not correct, then they would return unauthorized. Unauthorized. This is like 2.2. If token is not valid, then it will. If token is valid, then it will send that request to Lambda, and it sends that request to your application. So now your application is free from writing any security authentication related code. Your app is the pure business code. Code is much cleaner. This works, right? You see this picture, right? You secure it like before it's going to be. And then this security, it can be GWT token that's generated from Cognita. So we will learn Cognita in the afternoon. So Cognita, this is where you store your user information and like all the user related actions, operations that you can delegate to this Cognita entirely. So you don't have to write any, like now in 2020, you don't have to build your user module from scratch. If you do so, it will be it will take a lot of time. And then like that's working, that costs a lot of money from the business. And once you do something, then there might be some bugs. And then you have to implement like new features if there is, like password policy, like everything you have to do. And there is a lot of issue in doing that yourself. So instead you can, every application in this world needs this user module. So it's something other than there. So that's what user sign in, provide username and password, and they return this token. And using this token, it can and if you provide this token to API gateway, it can check if it's valid token. And if it's valid token, it will send that to Lambda to your application. That's exactly what we will do today. You will see in your own eyes. I'm just giving you some heads up. The other one is, let's say that it's called by some other third-party developers. So this API is public API, let's say, and then some other organizations calling your API. In that case, you can generate API key for them, right? API key for them. Following? So basically, it can. So this, I'm not like now even more diving into that. So it can check, it can secure based on GWT token or API key, or you can use Lambda for more complex this authentication mechanism. Yeah. So you have three options. So Lambda. So we will do this with our hands. To practice this API key of authorization, it's simple. Maybe if I have time, I can demonstrate this too. And I want to elaborate once again on this API key part once again. The API key is like bunch of one string text, like something like password. So API key, it's a bunch of passwords. And this API key you assign to your client applications, right? So like any client application, third-party client. Okay, the real life example is, let's say that, so there is one popular API for payment, which is Stripe, and many applications using Stripe, using that API to delegate all payment-related stuff. And what they give you is, they give you this API key. And then this client, in this case, now it's you. This is how now, like you are the provider, you are the API provider. So you are generating this API key for your client. The best thing about this is here, the best thing is it's associated with, like, one API key is associated with one client, one-on-one relation. Here, you can set some throttling rules. Okay, that's like the point I'm trying to make. So for example, you, like this client, it's a client that didn't pay anything, didn't subscribe your API. So you might want to give that client like, hey, you can access 10 requests per second. If you pay me like 10 more bucks, then I can increase it to 1,000 requests per second. So that you can define with API gateway. So that's second reason why API gateway is handy. You can set the authorization there, and you can set the throttling rules. It's just a few clicks. And there was one computer student who worked on like one of the biggest applications in his country. And then he just spent 1 year to implement this throttling using Nginx and writing so many configurations, like for each client. But in AWS, just a few clicks, and then it's enabled. Yeah. So that's here. I have written on this. Monitoring, it's like how many requests you receive per second and latency, all this is useful. Yes.
Authorization key has some timing, like will be valid for.
You mean this API key?
Yeah.
API key that it's generated once, and if you want to rotate this, I think you would rotate it manually, and then give them new. Yeah, it's one time. Yes, exactly one time. Yeah, but this GWT token is temporary, so you can it turns a token and also refresh token is can do that. Okay, yeah, like today's lesson is gonna be like something big, so I will talk about so many. So for example, when it comes to Cognita, like in organizations, there are multiple applications, like internet applications, and you want to have like one single sign. So those like something that I will discuss today. Okay, so you have REST API and WebSocket API. So REST API is something with this API that uses HTTP verbs, and this is how these two different, I would say, organizations, they exchange data, and there is like some contract there. You have to send this attribute to me, and I would do this action, and I would return back this to you. This is like contract and API. There is something called the HTTP API in Cognita. It's nothing. It's just this REST API, some more HTTP features, but then this like you don't have to pay more attention. It's just ignore this one. It's nothing interesting. We can instead with this HTTP API using REST. So just ignore this. It's nothing interesting. WebSocket is different type of API. Okay, let me elaborate once again. So REST API, how it works is, it's a client, and this is the server. You send like store course information, and then it stores it in the server, and then it returns the response. And then it might take like 50 milliseconds, right? And then if you wanna make the second request, like get course, then it processes it and it returns the course information like response. And then this, let's say, took 20 milliseconds. So something like that, you send request, you receive response, that's where the connection ends. So this is like, to achieve this store and retrieve, there is one connection here, and there is the second connection here. So 1 and 2. And this connection is like short-lived, whereas WebSocket is, your client is here, your server is here, and then they create like one socket for you, like one. There is then basically what is it? It's only one connection between server and client, only one connection. So during this connection, you can send message like n times, and you can receive response n times. That's what WebSocket is. There is only one connection, and you can send request, you receive response, you send request, you receive response. Make sense? One versus many, yes. REST API is we use daily basis. HTTP API is it's AWS specific. They just added some new features on REST API on top of REST API, and then they call this HTTP API. It's under the hood, it's just REST API. So nothing interesting. You can still develop HTTP or web API using REST. Doesn't matter. Like it's something that is AWS specific, so I can even remove it from my side. Just to give you some information. So when you create an API, you will see these 3 options, like 4 options. And I'm here telling you that like HTTP, just ignore it. It's nothing interesting. There are like 2 main. So notice here, this is like from architectural perspective, you have these 2 different. Now let's go back to send and response. And this is how people implement this chatting application. You send message and you receive response, you send message, you receive response. This is like continuous. Yes.
The WebSocket, the server is always stand up for the client, even if the client is not requested, like on the first year. Client sends a request and it gets back and it make the instance free, but on the other hand, it's always
Okay, I would say that that's very good question. So they listen. So okay, the biggest difference. Okay, I would say like two characters. The two biggest difference between regular API and the WebSocket API. So first thing, as you see here, WebSocket theoretically there is only one pipe, like one connection. Whereas in the regular API you have like a number of connections. And another so here okay, so once again, so answer to his question is okay, so there is okay, the main difference is this is long-lived, this is long-lived, this is short-lived, I mean. This is short-lived. The WebSocket is long-lived. This connection lives longer. And that's the biggest difference. Because since it's long-lived, then you have one connection that you reuse it. Answer to his question is, let's say that this connection is supposed to be alive for 100 seconds, right? And then, okay, first 20 seconds, client was sending request actively. And then somehow client like stopped sending request. You were chatting with the agent, and then you had and then maybe the agent didn't send you a response back, and then you were waiting, and then like you are doing now something else. In that case, this connection is still one, but then they terminate. This connection is still open, but then they terminate this like for temporary purpose, temporarily, and then when you chat it again, they open it. You will see like something like this. It's still one connection, but they shut and open, shut and open. And you can see like in your browser, inspect it, and then in the network tab, you will see something like this. But the main thing is this WebSocket is, this is like the most powerful and popular technology that came to today's world. And this is powerful, and yeah, the point I'm trying to make is it doesn't use much resource on the server side. Even if you have 10,000 users like chatting with your agent, like 10,000 active connections using WebSocket, that doesn't cost like database connection. Like it's two completely different. WebSocket is completely different technology that doesn't use much resource on the server. So here, and then with WebSocket, you can again build chat application, or I don't know, like this is just one connection that you can reuse. Is there anyone who would be looking for a job as Java developer? Yes, anyone? Everyone? Okay. So let me ask you one interview question. So this is what I would ask if I were your interviewer. Like, how much do you know about application pooling? Can you implement that in your Java application? Like pooling between your Java app and database? Okay, someone. So it's like real question that Trevor asked. So how will you answer?
Proxy.
Proxy? Okay. Okay, this is something you should know as Java developer. This is people use it in every Java application in the US. They use this database pooling. It's similar to, okay, you have database here. This is your database. Typically, it's relational database. And then you have Java app here, right? And then Java app, it can, like, there could be like n number of instances that's connecting to your data, like Java instance 1, instance 2, and then like Java n. So if you use this, if you follow this approach, then what would happen is in a database, you would end up having n number of connections. So database connection like this is super expensive. It would use up a lot of space. And you would want to reduce this n number, like something less than n. That's when this database pooling comes into the picture. So what happens is that now you have your database. You have your database, and this is what pooling is. You do it in your Java code. There is a pooling in here. Maybe there is one. There's like 2 connections here. Now database has not n number of connections. It has 2 connections. And then all this Java 1, Java 2, Java n connecting to this pool, this connection pool, and then reusing these 2 connections. So this is the first code like I noticed when I joined it. So I joined it as a Java developer, and then in the application you have this. And then I think when you call third-party API, I think you use like there is REST client, like Spring has REST client. Like when you use this, like in 2018 when I was working on this REST client, this Spring's REST client doesn't support this pooling. Okay, this is just always the one-on-one connection. And then, but the Spring Boot is like something, it's built on something like HTTP client. It's in Java. Here you can define pooling. So basically HTTP client pooling in Java DB. It's something you should know, like you're looking for. It's a Java developer. So do this research, check out 1 or 2 blogs, and now make sure that you know that this is like something popular. Okay, that like somehow I was talking about this. And again, it's completely different 2 things, but just seems similar. Yeah, so and literally like anything can call your API gateway, your web app, mobile app, IoT devices, like you call it. Anyone can call your API gateway. And the API gateway, behind the API gateway, literally there can be like any API, not only AWS services. Like as long as your API has public URL, then you can use API gateway on top of that. Anyone can call it. You can run any API behind the API gateway. That's the key point here. If you have like existing API that you use right now in your side projects, in that case, you can use this API gateway and then utilize the features that I just discussed. Like let's say your API needs now throttling. In that case, you can do it yourself or just use API gateway on front of your existing API and then use its feature, use its throttling feature. And then, so it's request and it sends response and it can cache that response. I think you have to do like you have to spin up one caching server and that will charge more, but you can use it. And the main benefits that we will discuss today is just this authorization that can use a big foundation token and API keys for third-party developers. And here you can set throttling, throttling. And resilience is also this related to this one. So basically these three I will focus. And of course, there are like some minor features that I will discuss, but these two, just for now, let's focus on these two. And then there is some other benefits, like it can generate SDK for your application, for your API. So your API deployed, you click one button and then they will generate SDK for your application automatically. I mean, selected language maybe. I have my API, and now I want to have like Java SDK, then it can do that for you. Life cycle management. This is, I think, everything. So in API gateway, you can have multiple stages like V1, V2, or something like that. So then, like if you do, it's like versioning in Lambda. You have your API, you deploy that as V1, and you made some changes. And maybe that is not compatible with the previous version. In that case, you should keep your previous API while deploying the new one. So not like you have to have like, you cannot simply overwrite the existing API because there could be like hundreds of users using the previous version. So you have to be backward compatible. That's why I think this is handy. And you can create API easily, and then you can monitor this. Okay, REST API, I'm skipping this. Just something from Wikipedia. This is, I will talk at the end of the class, like end of this topic. So I have to show some demonstrations here. Yeah, that's here. So I just, for now, this is fine. Well, that's pretty much all. Let's see this in action. So we do have application running, up and running in Lambda. Let me do a smoke test once again if it's working. So we did first Lambda. I'm gonna use this. And I might need to change some values in here since I have got it. So to make this unique, I changed this course code, the partition key. This should go through. So we are storing it. And I think now you have completed the other CRUD operations. Hope so. Please do that. I think one of the students shared some sample code that you can get some idea like what parameters. So basically the task is basically create these 4 or 5 functions, and then all you have to do is just build this parameter, right? If you are updating, then build this update parameter. If you're deleting, build this delete parameter. That's good. And test it. Okay, it looks like it's saved. So which table did I use? Maybe first table, and there should be 517. Okay, I think this one looks like it's working successfully. So now let's do this assumption that we are done with our application development. Let's get it deployed. Let's make it available to public. So that's when we use this API gateway. We have create one API. You see, like there are these options. So HTTP API, this is just REST API, nothing interesting there. WebSocket, this is long-lived connections. And this is what we will use. This is just typical REST API. REST API private means you can launch this API in a VPC. And then it's like in VPC, it's internal. Maybe it's not public API, you are using something that's internal to your company. In that case, you can use this private. So we will choose this REST API. Just hit build. And you see here, like there are like two, when you create an API, they ask like these two types. So in an API gateway, you can think that like there are these two types. Okay, HTTP is sensitive to REST. So new API. So this is course API. So call it here. That should be where selected type, give it select type, give it name, and it should be there. And now currently there is no endpoint. So let's implement our first endpoint. So what we will do is resource. The resource is course table. So the resource is course. So I'll call it course. And I want to check this. I want to enable this course because I might be calling this from my front end running in the CloudHost. So I enable this. It's options. Since you enable this, there is options method because that's how browsers work. Browsers make implicit options call to your backend to see if it returns this expected headers. Expected headers. This. Since now it returns this expected headers, it is allowed. Okay, next thing is create the method. So we have this endpoint and maybe it's a post endpoint. So basically now what will happen is what we are doing is api.example.com/course, and you are making post request. Okay, that's what we are building right. Values. Browser cannot make post call. It can only make get call. So that's why you need this postman, and I think why they also call post. So it will look something like this, of course. And then instead of get, we have post endpoint. So URL resource post. And once you created this, like they would give you this URL. Okay, now like behind this endpoint, what will be working? As I mentioned earlier, literally you can run anything. So you can use Lambda function. So it's there because it's the most popular option. So they made it checkbox. And you can make it HTTP. In that case, you would do your existing API URL, https://api.existing.api.com, and then it would receive request on this endpoint, and then it would forward that to this existing API. So the advantage why we are stacking this is to use features that it provides. Okay, this is what HTTP proxy mode is instead of existing API. So for example, this link can be ALB link. ALB generates one DNS. Do you remember? You can just put that in here, and now you stack it. Your stack is like EC2 load balancer API gateway. So, and then here, this is important. Not only Lambda, it can call these many services. So if you want to save data to S3 bucket, but then you want to, like you have a bucket that only your system users put an image, like put files. In that case, you need to make sure that that request has weighted tokens. That's what this API can do. API can do it, and if user has weighted token, if request has weighted token, then it can store the file to S3. Sense? That's good. authentication is done on this, and then you can send it. Not only that, notice here, where is it? ST step functions. You see, we can do it with step function, and it can also send request to step functions. So yeah, these are the many steps that it can. Okay, let's go back. So this is Lambda. Lambda, I think you should select this so that you would receive your body, all your information from client properly. Just select this, use Lambda proxy integration. And then here, it should show up. Of course, if you type it, it will show up. Course Lambda, that's exactly what we want to run. And then use default timeout, and this is 29 seconds. This is very important. If there is something that, if your application processor request more than 29 seconds, it's hard limit, so you cannot use API gateway. You have to consider something different. Notice here, you are about to give Lambda this resource-based policy. In the configuration tab, currently we have permissions, and we talked about there are two types of IAM and resource. Nothing in here. This resource is loading, but there's nothing. We didn't. After we did that, we just gave it Lambda permission automatically since in the console. In real life, if you were writing this, you have to write this yourself in the template. Refresh. Now I see one. This coming up. And then this here. Very simple as API gateway. API gateway can invoke Lambda like when, but only this time. So I think we can take on this. So API gateway can invoke function, but only this API can only invoke this one. Only this endpoint can invoke this function. So this is like this other that's associated with the Lambda. Sure. Yeah. Anyway, so it's there. And now this method request, integration request, method response, this is very, very important. Why it's important is let me. You have your application now. Let me show you in the console. Okay, let me draw it once again. You have your app. You have your client. And now you have something in between, API gateway. And some people call something in between proxy. If there is something between your client and the server, they call it proxy. Something like this. I will explain it in contrast with traditional approach. In traditional infrastructure, what you have is you have your client, and then you have your server. Your app is running on this server. And then you get, you're calling this client is from the cloud, you're calling your server backend API, and then you get core0, let's say, core0. And then what you do is, like in Node.js, for example, you do npm install cores. And now this issue is solved, because what it does is, again, it adds those headers in the response. So if you see core0, then you have to do some those values in the header. And then call, so it returns those headers in the response. Header, in the header you have these course headers. You follow this? Okay, now let's say that you did the same thing, like you are a new developer and you don't know much about API gateway, how it works. And you did this npm install cars, the same thing. But here, you still get that car 0. Right? What's wrong with this? And you are like so confused and you get frustrated. It takes like hours. You don't know why, because from application perspective, there's all the settings, but you still get an error. You know that feeling, right? You did everything correct, but it's not working. The reason is API gateway omits all the headers, like omits headers by default. So basically, your application is sending those course headers, but since you explicitly allow that in API gateway, this course headers is not passed down to your client. It's similar to security group. In security group, by default, nothing is allowed. Same thing in API gateway. By default, no headers are allowed. So you have to explicitly add like what headers are allowed. And now the root cause is here. You get that frustrating error because your application does something correctly. It sends the response. Unfortunately, that headers are omitted or like removed or something like it's removed at this layer, and now layer 4, layer 2, and then your client is not seeing that. So that's when this comes into the picture in the method response. You see, okay, in method response, do you see here like no headers? Even if your application is sending those course headers, you won't, like it doesn't forward that to your client. So you have to do this again, like yourself. And Lambda, this you don't have to Lambda. It just, I think it works. So in Lambda, like it passes through. It passes through automatically. But if you're running some other services, then you have to define that course headers in here. So what I mean by course header is here. Here. Allow headers. So to fix course header on your client side, you must have this header. So now you are explicitly defining this header is supposed to be forward. So please do so. And also cursor has this 3 more headers here. Headers, methods, and origin. Oh, that should be it. Now it should be forward. Sense? Okay, you would notice it, and then like I faced the same issue. Like it was so frustrating. And how I noticed is that with my Postman, like when you make request, you receive response in here. In the response, you will see that header tab. In the header tab, like I realized that, whoa, it's not sending my header. That's like how I come up with the solution.
So we get in here that the 402 is forbidden. What would be the issue?
So that assignment will start today. So I will, yeah, let's take that offline. Yeah, we're just now going through this some basics, and then after that, okay, but you got the point, right? You got the point. So it sends header, and this you have to allow it. That's one of the things. And the second thing you can do is, I think that's pretty much it. Okay. Now that like this, let's test. We were about to test. So what we did is we added this endpoint and we associated time. That's it. Period. Nothing more. And that should be it. Let me do one thing. Let's test it. So you can test it from here. Like before deploying your API, you can test it from here. query string. What is that? Didn't define anything like query strings. Since it be hidden. Yes, you can update. Wait, okay, so let's test this out. So since it's hard code, I have to change my Lambda code once again. 518. Deploy it. So let's test our endpoint, like Lytton test. I can just provide anything here, doesn't matter, since it's hard coded. Test this. Okay, so it went through you. Let's see. It should be there now. We have 6 record. Okay, fingers crossed. There should be 7. Yes. 518. Yes. So it's working. So our integration with API gateway is done. So it's working successfully. Now we tested our API, our endpoint. Now the only thing we need to do is just deploy it. Right? Let's deploy because we integrated this and we tested it. It's all working. So deploy the API. Create new instance. I just call it v1. That's what I always do. v1, version 1. Deploy. And here is your URL. Okay, here is your URL. You can customize the URL. It's not a big deal. It's just a few clicks. Like go to this button and then you can customize this URL.
So if you click both that you are what will happen?
It would hit your API.
So what kind of method are we getting? Are we executing Git or pause? Or which one?
We defined this, right? We built this together. Like there is one here. Do you remember that I was creating this course?
If you have multiple methods, how we are gonna like differentiate that? Because we could have post Git.
Yes. Yeah. Then why you just do Git? You just do Git. Okay. Okay. Sure. Let's replace this. That's it, right? This is the URL. Makes sense? Everyone following? Since it's hard coded, and I gotta. After this, I make it dynamic. For now, very last manual change in the code. What's done in this? Okay, now we are doing end-to-end test. So basically, in the body, what we will do is JSON. And here we are supposed to provide source code. Says 520. And we need some more. Course code, course name, teacher name. This amount is yeah. So I just provide a string in here because if you remember our code, then like in our code we define its type. So right now it's okay to have this, and then students. After you make changes to your API gateway and deploy, it doesn't pick up the changes immediately. Just give it 30 seconds to pick up the change. So that's why I am fast building this. S3, S2, S1. That should be it. Let's test this out. Git. Cool. You see, this is response from application. Refresh this. There should be 8, and I think in our code bit it's like 518. Now, let's do the very last step. Have to read this body, and then take a break. So here, I logged this out on purpose. Now here we can see how the actual request look like. Go to CloudWatch. Like even when we were doing that S3 event notification assignment, like to me, like in my development environment, I always do this because I never know like how the event will look like. So by doing this, you will see, you will know the actual event. Okay, where is it? Oh, by the way, guys, I just noticed one thing. So I cleaned up my account, but it looks like when I was deleting those EC2 instance of scaling group, looks like it didn't delete those alarms associated with a scaling group. So CloudWatch it's expensive service. Okay, make sure that you delete them. Like I think one alarm costs $1 or like it's expensive. It's expensive service. So make sure you clean up all your logs. And if you look at here, like logs, they are not deleted automatically. Okay. Course Lambda, I think this is here, and the latest stream is like the latest one. And I think this is the actual request. So course, post, and what we are interested in is the body. You see, 5. So it's saying 520. This is exactly what we sent from Postman. So in the event there is body in the string. So event.body, parse it to JSON, and then you did that. And then currently I do have only one endpoint. You have 4 or 5 endpoints. So you need to write if-else statement or a switch. Or okay, so here JSON define variable body equals to, it's in a string format, so we have to parse it to event.body. And then you can do body.course code course name. In JavaScript is a nice language. I'm gonna use its future. Like I don't want to do body.body.body.body. I can do something called destructuring. So here, course code, first name, teacher name, students, yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you get intimidated by this syntax, come to me. I will show you the easy syntax, like with body and body. Anyway, so now information is here. We just need to put this course name, teacher name, students, and here. Okay, so that should be it. I don't see any issues with my code now. So yeah. Go back to Postman. Where is it? It's icons. Course, it's course name, teacher name. Well, here is students. Looks good to me. Let's do the end test. Do something. Yes, I think it went through. There should be 8 records and 120. 9, yeah, this 120. And now, like our code is dynamic. Add this. It's saved. 21. Cool. So we have built out the API. So if you use this URL, then you can even call it. Like the best thing about Cloud is it's like deployed by default. But without Cloud, now you have your app, and then your biggest headache is how do I deploy my app now? But now it's already deployed. Let's take 10-minute break and we'll be back.
Oops. Yes.
I was trying to follow you, but I couldn't do this.
What I recommend to my students is like in the demo in the morning, like focus on what I'm explaining, because here while I was doing, I gave you lots of like very important points. Since you were like your attention to this, implementing this, you missed some of points that I told you. Because of that reason, like when you are doing this, you would get an error, and then you would come to me because like you didn't pay full attention. So okay, so that's like next in the afternoon, and just pay full attention to me, because every single word it's like from experience, like you get frustrated because you didn't hear that thing, and makes sense. And then even in my exam, I like take something very important that I told verbally, but then you were sitting here like you didn't know that thing was important, and you just miss it. Okay. Messing up implications open.
Scribble with one. I need to like I gave the that book. I need to be.
Okay. How do I say? Like you're lost. You look lost. You look lost because you didn't pay attention while I was demonstrating. Instead, that you tried to implement this yourself. Like you can implement this yourself after this class. But if you just paid attention to mine, like you notice here, like I didn't configure an IAM role there. I didn't configure any, and I didn't make any changes to this. I just associated with and it. And it's because did you deploy it?
Yes.
I have this. Yeah, I have this. And get lambda. What does it do?
It just scans on.
Okay. What I would do is I think there is some error with your
No, this works independently.
API stage V1. What are you? What is it? It's okay. You see, you created a stage called API stage. You follow? You created the API, and then like you were doing it yourself, and you were also like help person. This is how you did it. This is the way you did it. But here you included the way I did, but you didn't do the way that I demonstrated. Why do you add this V1? You have instead you have API stage.
Yeah, I did this first, and then here also.
Internet server 0. Yes. Something wrong with application server. Now there is something wrong with your application. Okay.
Like you mean this?
Yes.
Because like
Yes, there is an error for sure. 100%. Yes, this is directly from your application. Okay. API gateway expects status code and body.
like even for Git, because Git cannot have one.
Okay. I'll be saying this after the break.
Okay.
Send me your URL. This URL.
This.
Okay. Short answer to the like, it's not server error. There's something wrong with your application code. Short answer is that I will explain in detail. Now, if you don't have that, I'm fine with that. Short answer is that send me this URL and send me this file with this, and then I'll explain this to everyone.
I'd like to have a permission to get not alright.
Mm.
To get I'm not alright. I would like to ask for permission.
Sure.
I don't have a clear understanding
Mhm.
of what API is. So how do you define those API?
API is how two applications exchange data. That's it.
How to application exchange?
Mm.
So we have a client application here. And we like let's say we have a front end and a back end here.
Yes.
And to communicate, like we
Yes.
have a controller. And the-
No, that's completely different. No, don't think that way. There's no such controller in this way. You have application A and B. They want to talk to one another. They want to exchange data. For example, you want to save course information, right? You need course data from your client application. And that's what I mean by data exchange.
That's just definitely how it's a protocol for a data exchange.
It's not. Ah, yeah, kind. Okay.
Okay, and also when we write a Lambda function,
Mhm.
we click deploy right first before we test.
Mhm.
So what does deploy do behind the scene?
Behind the
What
scene,
is deploy?
deploying means, so for example, you created your application. So for example, here, now let's say that you added a new method called get method, let's say. Like adding one more. So now this API, what it does is it has only one, it can do only one thing. You want to make now add the second action. In that case, you would add that, let's say like get, and then to replicate, like to sync that up changes to your production, like you made some changes and like it's similar to hitting save button. Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
Okay. I think you need to study like these basics first, because this is something is compressed dense, and then there is something MSc students also learn this, but when the MSc students learn this, they have no experience, but they have experience building these APIs. Like before, this is the very last course. So prerequisite for this course is like all the students in this course have experience in developing APIs, so they know it. So I want you to do like some extra study yourself and build some API yourself. I think you maybe did that in your previous class.
Yes, I
You did, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I developed a full stack project.
Okay.
And that's what API means is we have to write some code on the controller, right? So we have to put the URLs there.
Okay, this controller, those is like it's, yeah, this is like Java specific stuff.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's correct. But yeah, the controller is, yes, that's what API is.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
call what API.
Yeah. Yeah,
For instance,
But
in
this-
the
it's-
stack project,
yes.
what which parts do you call
Mhm.
API?
Okay, but API is broader than that controller, because API is general. I talked about this, right? It's more general, and how you API in Java languages using like controller. But here we are doing the same thing, like it can exchange data, but we didn't use any Java. And you can implement this like API in Python, then you have like some different. So it's like more broader than, but then yes, controller is an instance of creating API.
Thank you.
Okay, don't get intimidated by these big names. It's just a bunch of big names, but under the hood, this is not very difficult.
Yeah.
Okay, please don't get intimidated by this. Like, and yeah, this lesson this week it's a new stuff. Like these two topics, they are not related, and you can learn it for sure. It's not that hard as it sounds. As I'm not. We miss one student here, and one more there. Okay. Okay. Okay, sure. So one thing, one bottom line I wanna say is, don't do this with me while I'm demonstrating. Like you have your time at your home, like you are with yourself for 24/7. You can do it yourself after the class, but for now, just focus on these explanations. Like I'm giving some very important points that might cost you hours, like verbal. Like focus on like every single details that would help you a lot, and also that would help you a lot in your exam. Right? I did something and I asked. That's how the exam is like. Here, there's one student created this. So here, this is also very important. This student's lambda is here. Cool. Do you see this lambda? It's working nicely. It returns list of records in the table. Right? So thanks, Bikram, for sending this. That's like this is what Bikram sent me. So it returns this. Okay, lambda is working perfectly. He made it in an API. And now he is facing an issue, and then he is having some trouble, like internal server. Lambda is working, integration is successful, and why? Short answer to this is, when there is something wrong with your application code, you get this error. That's short answer. And I also get this error a lot. It's so frustrating. Like this might be one of the disadvantages of API gateway. If you don't have experience, but after working on this for many years, I learned how to like debug this. When you do you see like Lambda is working, you get this error, and now how do you debug this? How do you debug this? I learned this recently, by the way, after many years. Okay, so here in API gateway, you do have some global settings. So this domain names, settings, API keys, they are global setting. And if you wanna do change something in your API, then the settings beneath this course API, not this guy, they are separate. So in settings, notice here, it asks, so by default, it doesn't log anything. So basically by default, there's no way to debug this. Basically, like why API gateway is complaining? Impossible. No log, nothing to trace. Now here you can, as its name suggests, you can create one IAMROD ARN that can write some logs. In that case, once you put that, you will see like why it's giving you error in CloudWatch. Because manual by default you cannot see it, but once you configure this, you can see the logs. That's what this guy is. That's how you debug. And then again, you receive this because of this application side error. And now let me make it have the fixes. So this is your JSON payload. Everything in this world is a contract. Like all API in this world is a contract. Do you remember the Lambda response? 1 second. So this is what we have currently. A Lambda response. So in my case, it succeeded. In his case, it failed, right? Then that means like we're doing something differently. Yes, like this is what he is returning. It fails. What I'm returning is I'm returning to API gateway SQL. I return a status code 200, and in the body I return the payload, like whatever you want. This is what the API gateway expects. If you send something different, like some different format, some different payload, then it will fail. It's type error. His fixes, so basically, Ikram, you have that response, right? So do this. Copy and paste this, like this. It's supposed to be this way, and this is your response. So this response is here's the const response await scan, and then parameter. It's his code, right? Ikram, can you confirm? This is the code you wrote, and then it returns response. And now you, instead of returning this as is, you have to wrap it inside this proper response. So once you do that, it will be fixed. Are you doing this? Then maybe let's check together. You did it? Okay, if it's taking time, that's okay. That's more one. What else do I have? I talked about this. Oh, let's talk about now this API key, that throat thing. How you set this throat thing? Okay, Bikram, just take it. It looks like it will take like 5 or 10 minutes. I'll just stop there. Let's do it later. So for now, just focus on this. Right. So here, if we go to the stage, you would notice that there is some throat thing that configured at stage level. So basically, currently you can send 10,000 requests per second, and burst is 5,000. Burst is like requests at the same time. All right. If you send this 10,000 requests like evenly in 1 second, you would not get any error. But if you send 5,000 error at the same, more than 5 at the same time, you would get an error. Like it protects your application. That's why it's there. If you send your application requests more than it can handle, then your application goes down. Then your application is down. It protects your application by setting these limits. In my development API, I decreased this number, like 100, and then 50. Because in development, I am a team of 10 people are accessing it, and there won't be that much. And that's like some idea of this throttling and protecting your API. This is how you protect your API. Yeah, and this is just configuration. You can decrease it, and now you configure this stuff there. But then some people do it manually, like using Nginx, and that takes years, to achieve this. Anyway, and that's related to our next topic, API gateway. Like I gave you some information, just a reminder. this API key, a client, one-on-one relation, and you can set those rules in this client level. That's what I'm getting at right now. No case in here. Create API key, customer name. Okay, give me one customer name. MIU. Okay, MIU is calling our API. That's good. So MIU is our custom. So we are generating this API key for MIU, and here copy and give that to MIU representative. Yeah, this is the key that you would give them. And now here you can add something like usage plan. Okay. Now MIU, how much it can use. Like add some plan in here. Add that. MIU usage plan. It doesn't show. So it looks like I need to create the usage plan first. So okay, this is the process of creating API key. And API key, they are like different buttons. So they are like two different things. So I create the usage. So I create the API key for MIU, and I will now create usage plan for. So name is MIU usage plan. And now this is where you set throttling. MIU, they didn't subscribe, so 5. This is quota, like how many requests it can send. 1,000 per month. If it's more than that, that's you will see like modern, all like this, the biggest, the most popular APIs in this world. They work this way, and in this class you learn how to build an API, something like those world-class APIs. You learn this. You're seeing this with your own eyes. Here, this is how you can do it with these sieves. Following this, and hit next. And so we created that usage plan, and now we have to associate that usage plan with our API. So I think that's course API, and the stage is V1. Okay, and that should be it. So we created usage plan for that API associated with. Yeah, this is all the one-on-one relations, but you might you just need to create like 3 different things, like usage plan, API key, and associated with. But I think you got the idea. Okay, another thing is you can even set throttling at like more granular, like at method level. Instead of entirely, you can set it to like under this get method, you have this limit. Post, you have this limit. Resource, course resource. Post, you have one or. So to me, it doesn't case like. Yeah, just keep it this way. I think I used fireman. Like entirely all the endpoints. Save it. And now we created usage plan, and we configured like throttling even at this entire API level and then this method level. And now it should show up here. Like maybe let us refresh this page. And add usage plan. Usage plan name is yes.
And the usage plan, does it have like auto scaling feature? What if our application or API become popular and the number of requests increase in handling? What will happen? Should we continue to configure it again, or increase the automatic?
Okay, on usage plan, you don't have to do anything. So when your API gets popular, that's how you are managing with that throttling. Like at the API, there was like some 10,000, 5,000. So, okay, answer to your question, I would say the maximum number of requests per second is 10,000. It cannot do more. Yeah. But 10,000 it's a big number. Just think about this. And how many seconds in one day? Like trillions. How many? Then multiplied by 10,000. So yeah, like there won't be any issues. Like it can scale up, and that's why in the description it can provide at any scale. That's why that also answers your question. Like it can give you that consistency. Okay. Well, I'm trying to find that usage plan and name MIU usage plan. I want to copy it. This MIU. Oh, now it comes up here. Oh. And that's basically it. So there is an API key associated with this USH. So this MIU, I would give it to MIU, and then there's a usage plan, like how much it can send. And then this usage plan is associated with the API. So now basically what you gotta do is in this post method, in the method request, that's where you set this, how you secure your API. And the API key required, you can make it true. And then now it's API key is required. And that configuration, you did this like previously in the usage plan. You associated to them. So you just true yes, and then it would work. So for now, I don't want. Maybe want. Okay. Maybe yes. Cool. So we made change. Deploy API, because once you made change, you have to save it. This is how you save it, like deploying the new change. Let's wait for 30 seconds. Yes. Yes.
Different methods, or it could be.
I would say this is depending on your business. To me, in my side projects, I have throttling for this entire API level. That's it. But then in API gateway, you can have more granular level throttling, such as you can set it entire API level, per client level, and even per method level. So to me, in my side projects, like it's too much, like it's hard. But maybe some businesses, if they require, then you can do that. It's up to you. Yeah, up to the business. Okay. So now it should be there. Basically, we just secured our API. So when we do this, oh, it didn't pick up the changes yet. That's supposed to throw an error. Yes. Yeah. Okay. The issue that you're getting is, did you issue this API key, all this stuff? Maybe you selected that true in the first. Maybe. Okay. Let's take that offline. Check your method request and see if you selected that API key true. Like it's supposed to be false in your case. Okay. You get this. You secure the API with API key. And what you need to do is provide that API key. So in the request, you do, like even this Postman is smart enough to know the keyword for this API key. So you put X API key. This is like a standard. And then here, where is the API key? Let's pull it from here. API key. MIU. Show it. Okay. Go back to this Postman. Hedrus. Yes. one way of securing your API. The second way, it's like something B2B communication. Your API it's your business, and another third-party develops their B. But now, what if there is T2P communication, like your clients, and in that case, you need to provide the lister. That should be it. What else can we cover? Here in this stage variable, this is handy in real life. When you write real life application, you put some. This is just, think of this way: stage variable is environment variable for API gateway. Just environment variables. So don't. So for example, here you have this post request, and let's say that you have maybe table name that you need to provide before storing it, and then here you want to read it from environment variable. In that case, you can use that stage variable. That's useful. That's something you should know. And now I talked about this method response and method request. Method request is same. Like here, you have to capture like what headers are allowed. Otherwise, that header is omitted. Okay, last and very important thing. This is the last. I guarantee. Like I understand. Like we have covered too many things, but yes, like we covered this entire service in how much? Like 1 hour and 30 minutes. If you read the documentation, then it's written in thousands of pages. I just everything in one, and also like I have experience, and I told you like the main things like, when you actually do it. So the last one. This is super handy. Okay, let's do one more interesting demo. And let's do one more interesting demo. I want to create a new resource. I've called it course PB. I still need this. So what it does is this first course, it calls Lambda, that calls DynamoDB. But we learned that the API gateway can call other services. And in our Lambda, think about our Lambda, what we are doing is we are just passing through. We don't have any computation, any logic there. So why can't we directly call the DynamoDB? That's what I will do now. Create a method, post method, AWS service. Here it's US East 1. DynamoDB. This is post that the underlying DynamoDB services, like it's all post. Action name, put item. We are making put item. Role, now API gateway is directly calling your Lambda, so you have to give API gateway the role. Since it's a special account, we always use lab role. And like that, to me, it's handy because lab role data. Let me grab lab role data. Just a refresher on IAM, small refresher, that lab role, we know that it has permission to put item. Like it's configured somewhere here. Like these 3 policies, it's the setup. So it's somewhere there that it allows. So that means like with lab role, it can do. Trust relationship. Anyone remember? Who can assume this role to retrieve that token, right? And here, and there should be API gateway. Do you see here? It's API gateway under EC2, yes. You can assign this to API gateway. That's why audit possible. API gateway can use it. Like there are two things in IAM: permission, what can do, who can do, and who can do is defined in here. We just confirmed that it can, and permission we in previous lab we checked it, so it can do it there. So here, and then pass through, just pass through, and there should be it. There should be it. Okay, it's here. Now, what do we do? I think that's it. We got a test. When we test, DynamoDB post. So you can check AWS documentation to see what that expects, but I think we already know it. We can even grab it from the Lambda. Okay, let's build it ourselves. It's like this guy, right? Passing it through. Okay, table name is first table. Course code is, now we need to hardcode for test. CS bio. And so there is no such variables. This is an array. First name, out computing. Amount is 1 year. First name. Okay, should be, fingers crossed. The super fast. Yeah, this is like the response. Okay, let's just say we put 560. Is it here or no? It's not here. But 24. Okay, let's get debugging. Sending request is put item, receive it, final second endpoint response header. Okay, API gateway return this response. Here, transformation error, muted body after transformation. So it says serialization error. So something like do you see any? This is number. Which one?
Quotation in that and
Which one in on this dish? Okay. Give me one second. So I have that code snippet. Should be somewhere here. No, this not this one. Yeah, it's here. So this is
on time and we need to be inside the quotation.
Application on item, line 3.
this one.
Yep.
Okay.
All of line.
Sure. Okay. Thanks for correcting that. Yeah, 560. Save it. Okay. Yes. Okay. So we received this. That's here. Some more things. Stage variable. So we can read again Yes. So in Lambda, we read this table name from environment variable. If you are doing something this table name is something that you can have. So you can read it from state variable. I'm skipping that demo for now. Just for now, it's hardcoded. What other things do I have to do? Oh, okay. Now note this is here. If we deploy this, come back to here. Okay. I want to demonstrate some more things. This integration response here, mapping, and we return application JSON. So basically, now if I deploy this as a response, you would get that weird odd response from DynamoDB. Like you will see DynamoDB. Like you want to customize that response body into your own format. So that's mapping you can do. Like you want to map the request, you want to map the response. That's what these are so important, right? So useful. And here I would say like successfully added the course. And now I would receive this text. Maybe make it JSON. Response. It's mapping the response, so it should do it. And now basically we are overwriting the previous one. Okay, we just overwrote. The previously we received that order. And now let me do this. Deploy. So let's deploy this API. Okay, we have now a variation that we are calling DynamoDB directly. This postman. This new request, a new request is body and draw and JSON file 61, and then the same URL and post. Let's check this out. Forbidden because looks like there's a key. Wait, it's not that one. Yeah, we have to put. Remember course DB. Using authentication token. That's that error you receive when you don't have that endpoint yet. So maybe it needs some more time to replicate in course DB, and we can double check this. Post this post. It doesn't. We didn't put any. Yeah, it's false by default, so we don't have to provide that. Oh yeah. Okay. This answer to your question. I found it. You got this error, right? It's because you are trying to hit the endpoint that you didn't define. So that means that you have to double check your URL. This is common. I'll make sure I update that. So if you get this 403, then make sure your endpoint is there. So yeah, I removed this. Now notice here this demo. I just corrected this, and I don't even need this API. I didn't even provide. Put this. You see, it always fixed 403. Yeah, this like missing authentication, like this error message is not accurate, but that's yeah. And then you see that response mapping, you can do it, and this is very handy. Now, everyone notice here you are providing this weird DynamoDB syntax. You wanna just provide this guy. You can do that. You can do that in this integration request. In this integration request, mapping template, you want to map JSON string to regular, and you would receive regular string, and then in this mapping, you would basically map regular JSON to DynamoDB JSON. So it's like more convenient. Recommended, add that. So currently we do have application JSON. And here you do the mapping. And they use some, I think this template and I think it was this, it's one is Apache RTL. I think this guy. This is a small scripting language that's translating this template, and you can write small code, small scripts. In our case, we just directly do it. Anyway, Apache RTL. This is popular language that AWS use. So this Apache Velocity Engine RTL. This is what AWS uses for transforming data in serverless services. You can use it in API gateway, and you can also use it like in another like GraphQL service such as AppSync. Anyway, you can do that mapping. You follow it, right? You can do this mapping. So you only send this response. This is your request, and you can map that to here. And this table name, you can read it from a state variable that I just defined. And then you can build this from this to this. Do it. My assignment is not updated yet, but practice this. It will be fun. It will help a lot. It looks like you are doing something like AWS specific, but this gives you like, in general, like this works like, for example, now, not API gateway, now you are doing something called AppSync service, like GraphQL API. You need to do some sort of this mapping. Another thing, like at my last work, what we do is also this mapping. So we also use some like kind of this mapping stuff. So it will just give you some general knowledge on how to transform payload. So you can get benefit from it. Okay, cool. Cool. It was a big one. I think we covered almost every part. Talked about this. Okay. Can run any service proxy authorization. I'll show you this in the afternoon when I talk about Cognita. Custom domain, you can create custom domain, no issues. Caching, you can run that caching server in your API gateway, then it can improve your performance. And you can protect this using that throttling rules. And throttling we just discussed, like rate limit, burst limit. And this is, and then this slide is like if the maximum is not 30, it's 29 seconds. If it's more than that, you cannot use this. So here, some know-how. And this is something I just discussed. If you receive 500 error, then you can enable CloudWatch logging. And the CloudWatch is, just for your information, CloudWatch is expensive, so make sure you like delete those alarms and logs if it's not necessary. Otherwise, you would be charged for that. And we have just seen there are like 10, 20 alarms working that we did previous class. Currently, by default, I think your API can only handle JSON payload, and you want to upload files, let's say S3. Like you want your API to be able to handle files. In that case, you go to settings and then define like what MIME type, what type of files it can handle. So for example, it can, so if I add this, it means it can handle all image files. So you will see in that settings. So let's take a look at this settings. So what do we have? Course API, API key source in the header, and add binary. So right now, you see like it doesn't support any binary. You cannot upload any files. So you want to add it. So I wanna add like my application can store any image. So you do that in here. Otherwise, so now if I save change, now your API has an ability to process images. That's what this guy is. And integration request response are very important. With that, you can transform the payload. I showed you like we transformed the response. Alternatively, you can transform the request. And in order to, it's also a very main point, like in order to capture this query string path prompt, you have to define this. Otherwise, it's rejected by default, like security group. So you have to define what query string, what path parameters that you want to process. You define that explicitly. Stage variable, it might be handy. It's like environment variable for your API. And this is similar to, oh yeah, these 2 points are repeated. Yes, that's all from me. Any questions? Okay, let's take a break. And I know it's like too much, too intensive. So let's take a break.